Okay, welcome to 2019. So I'm going to do a video today, and it's something that I wanted to do and people have been asking about, and it is going to be about the Micro Squirt and Tuner Studio. It's not going to be a how-to video, it's not going to be a tuning video, it's just going to be my initial impressions of Tuner Studio and Micro Squirt, what I think about it at this point. And maybe down the road, once I get used to it a little bit more, we'll do some more in-depth stuff, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about my feelings, guys. If you guys aren't familiar, 79 Fox Body Mustang, twin turbo, stock bottom end 5.3. This one's a Gen 3 5.3. And BTR Stage 3 twin turbo cam, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so as far as the wiring goes, this is the Micro Squirt that has the harness, the plug-and-play harness. And it also has the idle air control and alternator control. So some of the older units didn't have that, but they added that stuff now, so that's really cool. Before you had to not have idle air, and you had to wire some stuff in and add a resistor for alternator control and some other things. So that's all added now, but it did burn up like another output. So I think you have less outputs than the earlier models. But everything just kind of works. So as far as the installation goes, I don't even think I made a video on the installation because it took probably 12 minutes to put the whole harness and everything on the engine and get it in position that I needed, because everything just kind of goes and plugs in. So these are some wires that I added and loomed, but this is all the micro skirt, but this is all the micro looming. So good quality. I like that. I mean, it's really nice, very fast install. I'm a guy that likes wiring though. I'm interested in wiring and I'm not afraid of it. But this was, really convenient. And I could see if you were intimidated by wiring or didn't want to do it, this would really save you a lot of headache. One thing to note with the harness, when I was installing it, it kind of tripped me out a little bit because it didn't have a cam sensor plug or oil pressure. So not a big deal. This is a batch fire system. So it just fires all 4 injectors on each side as a batch instead of sequential, one at a time. So it doesn't have the cam sensor. But when I first installed that, I was like, what is going on? Is there a plug missing? It took me a little bit to just realize that that's just how it's supposed to be. So if you really wanted to log oil pressure, or you'd have to figure something else out. But works perfectly fine just like this. Also really impressed on the first startup of the vehicle. So when I got it all on and hooked up and added power to it and added fuel and everything, I turned it on and I started it, and it actually started and idled the first time that I tried it. With the base tune that's loaded in the Micro Squirt, it's set up for 1000 cc, I think it was, and I had 210s in there. And honestly, you're not supposed to run technically the 210s because the impedance of the injector is too low, so you're drawing too much of a load. But it ran it with 210s. I don't think I would do it for a long time, but it started, ran, and idled. It was pretty rich, but it just worked. So that's pretty good for just the base tune that comes on the thing. So that was kind of awesome. All right, so here is the unit, and it's really small. Here is the idle air control plug, and it does have a couple inputs and outputs that come with it aside from the power and the grounds. So it did have a tech signal output, and it had a wideband signal in. So this will also read the wideband and make fueling corrections based on the wideband. So no narrowband O2s, runs off of the wideband, or you could run it, without any fueling inputs. So that's kind of cool. Really small unit. There it is compared to my hand, and I just got it kind of zip tied up there. One thing I'll say, I did make a mistake when I installed this thing. There's 2 grounds that come out of the harness, and they're both supposed to go to the engine block. So one of the grounds goes up through the harness and is bolted to the engine on the ring terminal, and one of the grounds comes back here through the harness, ran with the other positives. So I made the mistake of grounding one inside the car and one on the engine block, and it was fine, but it could have been bad. And as far as connecting to the computer, it has this little 2.5mm jack right here. It's just like a headphone jack, a little bit smaller. Normal headphone jack's 3.5mm. This is a 2.5mm jack that goes to a serial cable like this, and then you just get an adapter that runs USB to the computer. And there you go. So you just got this little guy here. This does have to be an FTDI chipset inside this cable. There's a couple different kinds. I didn't know that when I bought it, but Matt Happel from Sloppy Mechanics told me that it needed to be that kind. So I didn't know about that. I ended up getting lucky and buying the right one, but you could buy a cable that looks just like this and it not work. So another thing to keep in mind. All right, so now that we've gone over the harness, the computer, basically all the hardware stuff, I want to talk about the software next, which would be Tuner Studio. But before that, I want to talk about the price. So the price for that whole unit, as you see it, is $695. So $695, you would have a harness, a computer, running vehicle, and the Tuner Studio is also free software that you can use. There's upgrade options, which we'll talk about, but you can basically start, run, drive, tune for $695. So that's actually a pretty good price. All right, guys, so dipping into the software a little bit, I'm going to open up Tuner Studio, which I already have it open down here. And I'm in the vehicle right now. I'm re-recording this because I did it last night. I recorded about a 20-minute segment, and it didn't have any audio, so I'm redoing it. So this is what you see when you open the Tuner Studio platform, and it shows current project, last project, and some other ones that you have been messing with. So if I open the last project, it's nice and simple. It just shows you exactly what's there. Pulls it up right to the gauge cluster, and you can see I'm not connected. If I flip on my accessory switch, I give it 12 volts, it will turn the computer on and connect, but you'll see a prompt, or you should see something. So right now this difference report popped up right away. So if you change anything in the tune offline that's not loaded to the controller, to the computer, it's going to give you an option right now. It's going to show you the differences, and it has pages on here, and it'll show you multiple pages where you can see all the differences. And I think it was because I was playing with one of these the other day and slightly modified one of them. You can see they're a little bit different here. So you have the option to send current Tuner Studio settings like to the controller, or use controller settings. So the controller settings is basically what's on the computer right now, and you can select that. But that's pretty cool that it gives you a prompt right away that shows you that there's something different. Like if you're looking at this and there's something different on the computer, it tells you that right away. So I made that mistake quite a few times with HP tuners. I was viewing a different file than I thought I was viewing and made changes to that, wrote it, and then had problems. So kind of cool. So here's the gauges, and it's basically just a simple right click, and then you can change whatever gauge or settings you want. So that's pretty cool. Real simple. I'm going to try to keep this real short so it's not a how-to video, but we're probably going to get into some other stuff. So if you go into gauge cluster, you have this diagnostic section, and then tune, analyze live. This is in one of the upgraded versions, which is what I have. You can do this without getting any of the upgraded versions. So Hunter from Hunter Tuned, he went 9.2 in his Mustang on his gold box with Tuner Studio, and I think he still is using the free version, and he has never used the data logging software, and he went 9.2 at like 154 with this setup, with just using the free stuff. So it's very capable. You don't really need to upgrade it, but I like to data log. I like to see stuff, so I got it. And here is the Tune Analyze Live. I have a whole separate video on this. You start auto tune, and you can drive it, and it looks at your target airfield ratio and makes changes to your table as you're driving, and then you can save it to the computer. So that's pretty cool. Also does the same thing for warm-up enrichment. Like as you're starting the vehicle and it's warming up, it'll make fuel changes for you. So overall layout, everything is very simple. That's what I think. Like if I want to look at boost, it shows me boost. Accelerator enrichment, startup idle, ignition settings, fuel settings, basic settings. It's all pretty laid out, pretty simple. There's a lot of drop downs though in some of these, but you can see some of them are grayed out. And as you upgrade the software, these will become active, but a lot of them I don't have active because I have one of the lower levels. So if you just look at some of the basic stuff and what the tables look like, you have a lot of drop down menus for everything. Well, there's not a lot of guessing. There's not a lot of big tables. There's a lot of drop down menus where you can just select things. So that's pretty cool. I like that. This required fuel, it actually does a calculation based on your engine size, cylinders, injector flow rate, target air fuel ratio. It does this calculation, and then it gives you like your required fuel settings, and then you can change your engine size, all kinds of stuff. It's real simple. And maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I did use HP tuners for about 2 years, and so I think that helped, that I had a lot of, not a lot of, but some understanding of basic tuning theory and what things do to things. So if you're starting fresh, some of it may be a little bit more confusing. But let's move over to like fuel settings. You have EGO control, like exhaust gas oxygen control. So you can select in here with a drop-down menu, disabled, narrowband, dual narrowband, single wideband, dual wideband. So that's pretty cool. Like if you want to run the thing off of a wideband, a single wideband like I am, you select single wideband, and you can set the computer up so it will control air fuel ratio off of the single wideband, and then you can select, different parameters for how well it works, how fast it works, when it doesn't work, your authority, controller authority, like how much do you want it to work? And I like the ability to do that. So you can set it up where it's basically just running off the VE table and no automatic corrections, or you can set it up where it's going to automatically correct fuel off of the wideband. Your AFR table is where it's going to get that target from. So in this range, you're targeting 14, 12.5, 12, 11.5. So, these numbers might not be what you need to use, but that's what this table is going to be for. The EGO control is going to look at what your target air fuel ratio should be, and it's going to try to target these numbers. The other big one is you have your fuel table or your VE table. So your numbers are going to look probably a lot different than this, but you basically have, RPM, KPA, and what I think is really cool about this is you can change these axes to whatever you want. So if I only want this table to go up to 6,500 RPM, I just put it in there, and that's what it's going to do. I'll have to change them here, but you can just change it like that, where some other programs, you can't really do that. You're kind of stuck with what values are in there. So like if I change from, if I add a 3-bar map sensor, so if I go from like a 2-bar to a 3-bar, I can just change this axis here to whatever I want it to be. So say it's like a 1-bar and it only goes up to 100 kPa, and I change it to 2-bar, 3-bar. I just do whatever I want with it here. And you can see how I have it going up in intervals of like 10, and then I change it to going up in intervals of 20 because I want to have a little bit more resolution down here. So you can adjust it that way just by changing these numbers. So it's really, I think that's really nice. It's very simple, and it just works like that. And I was so confused by that. I think I even messaged Hunter one day, and I was like, dude, is this how this works? Like, is this how easy this is? Because you can just change it. Because I'm so stuck with HP tuners and how you can't really change the axis and all that stuff. And the 2-bar to 3-bar conversion is like a big process and all kinds of stuff. So that you can just change it, do whatever you want. So another major table you're going to be using is like the ignition table, set up kind of the same way. So right now what this is doing, it is showing me a little circle of where my manifold pressure is, because I have the the key on right now. So if I key off, it's going to go offline and it's not going to show me anything. But basically, it also shows you active in real time where you are on the table. So if I'm accelerating and I'm increasing RPM, it's also going to move around. It shows you exactly where it is. So that's pretty cool. It's like tracing everything in real time. So if you make a change and you just click burn, and what I think is really cool about this function is you can burn it like as you're driving. It's like in real time all the time. So you can make changes. Sometimes it'll kill it. Sometimes it'll like backfire or misfire a little bit. If you rev up a little bit and then you burn it, it won't kill it if you're driving. Sometimes it will. I've had it die a couple times. You can be actively driving and say, or sitting here idling, and I want to change my idle timing to 20 degrees. You click that, click burn, and it just works. So that's pretty cool. Startup idle. I might actually change this on this video. Let's see how this works. So what I want to change, I think, is my cranking pulse percentage. And it shows you at the bottom what this thing is. The percentage table controls the fuel injected when the engine is cranking over. So let's do this. We'll do this in real time. Because I'm having an issue with this where it doesn't want to fire. I feel like it needs more fuel. So I try to crank it, doesn't. If I prime it and then immediately push the button when it has solid pressure, it will start. So I think I want to give it some more fuel. So I'll show you what it does normally. If that was too loud, I'll show you what it does normally. So you see how it kind of like idled up, it kind of like farts a little bit, but it doesn't really start. So what I think I want to do is give it some more fuel, but it's showing me actively where I am right now for my coolant temperature. So my coolant temp is about, what, 49 right there. 49 degrees in the garage today. So I can just click on this thing. I'll drag it up. Let's just be weird. We'll do it like this. Give it a little more fuel. And I like how it has these little tables and you can just kind of click and do whatever you want. So I'll burn it and then I'll try to start it. So that didn't work. So let's go up here. Burn. We'll give it a bunch of fuel. So just like that, all I did was drag this up and now it starts. So it's kind of cool. I mean, you just have to mess around with it, click the button. I don't know if I'll leave it like this forever, probably not. But now it's in the controller, it's in the computer. So even though I didn't save it yet, I can close this and then I'll save. But that was the prompt before. So if I did this one, it wasn't connected to the vehicle. If I made that change in the house and then I brought it out here and connected, it's going to tell me right away, hey, you made this change. Do you want to put it on the computer right away? So that's pretty cool. And then you get boost advance stuff. I didn't really mess with any of this stuff yet. But you got boost control setting, over boost protection, and you can select if you want spark cut, fuel cut, none, both. Like kill everything, set your boost pressure. There's a lot of different boost controller settings. I don't have the boost controller settings enabled, but if I do, I can enable them and change the frequency and all kinds of stuff. So it's real, I don't know, I think everything's kind of, seems like it's pretty straightforward. So let's check OBS, make sure we're still recording. 14 minutes. And we got some sound. That's a good sign. So let's get into the Megalog Viewer. So this is basically the scanner, the data logger, And you can see now it gives me this prompt that says the current file has been modified outside of this application. Reload the file. So again, between the scanner and the editor, basically, your Tuner Studio and Megalog Viewer, it's going to tell you if you make changes in one. It's going to talk back and forth and let you know. So let's just say no. And I want to show you this stuff a little bit. So I did this video last night, so I'll kind of undo some of it. So let's say we don't have this thing down here. And this is one of my drag passes when I went to the track with this car. The 7th pass I made on the car. And it shows you all the stuff. There's a lot of lines. And this is going to be a vague overview. So you have your max, your minimum, and different categories, graph 1, graph 2, graph 3. And what I like about this is you can pull in anything that you want to see, even if you weren't logging it during the pass. So that's why I had this stepper motor control in there. Stepper idle position. Okay, so this thing has the idle air control motor. So just something random that I would never really be looking at during a drag pass, but we'll add it in there just for giggles to see what's happening. So this is going to show you your stepper motor position. And that's really cool that you can bring stuff in, because you might be data logging the car, and 6 months from now you want to see some data that you want to compare data, because you're learning new things every day, right? So every time you go to the track, you're going to learn something new, and you might start data logging something 6 months from now, and that's like what you want to look at. But if you need to compare a scan from 6 months ago, you can do it by just pulling it in at any time. So that's really awesome. You also have the ability to just select what you want to see. So like max map, jump to max. Like where was my peak boost during my pass? Right there. You don't got to search for it. Where was my peak RPM? Right there. Don't got to search. Duty cycle, 51% duty cycle. Boom, right there. So peak RPM, which makes sense because duty cycle reads off of RPM. All right, so a couple other things just to go over in the scanner. So this is basically your tune on the right side here. This is your VE table, your AFR like commanded table essentially. And you can change these tables. So you can bring in whatever table you want to from the tune into the Megalog Viewer, and you can save it right from here. So if I want to change something, I can change it here and then save it, and then it's gonna I can change it here and then save it, and then it's gonna give me the ability to put it into the computer, which is really cool. So let's say my yellow line is my air-fuel ratio. And remember that little box that I was showing you before? This little oval right here? So I'll start at the beginning of the pass, and I'm going to click the play button, and watch what happens. It shows you everything that's happening. So this is my VE right here during the pass. Based on RPM. Now I lift, okay, and then it goes back down into high vacuum on decel, and that is exactly where the engine is running at that whole time. So if you want to go back into something, you can play this thing and say, okay, right after my 2-3 shift, I want to pause it, and I don't like my air-fuel ratio, or I don't like my timing. You can go into that and change it right here. So you could make a change. Let's say we want to take this whole box and decrease cells by, I don't know, 10, let's say. So it decreases all the cells, and then you can save this thing into the tune. And then let's go into VE Analyze. So what this is going to do is it's going to look at the whole data log, and it's going to compare these tables, and it's going to make changes to the VE table based on your target air-fuel ratio and the changes it needs to make to your VE table. So you can run analysis and see how all these numbers start changing. We'll do it again. We'll go into here, VE Analyze, and watch all these numbers. It's going to start adding, it's going to start subtracting, it's going to start making changes. See what it's doing there? And then it gives you information on what it changed. And then you can just accept new table and then save it and load it to the computer. And that is going to give you changes based on what your target air-fuel ratio is. So it's kind of a cool function, and I did use it on the street once, and I think I was at like an 11.0 air-fuel ratio when I was testing it on the street, and I wanted to target like a 12.5. And I did this VE Analyze one time, accepted it, wrote it, like burned it, and it was within like 0.3 of a point. It was actually pretty cool. I didn't know how well it was going to work, but it actually worked, and that was kind of nice. I don't really think I'll use it a lot for minor changes, but maybe for big changes, like on a fresh tune, like go out and drive it and like maybe under 3,000 RPM, just kind of cruising. It might be something to get you close really fast if you need to make big changes. But yeah, kind of cool. So I really like this setup. I like the scanner. It's visually appealing if I could get rid of some of the junk on there. And I like that it brings in the tune. So you can look at the tune and you can look at the scan at the same time. You don't have to go back and forth between tables. And you can save it and then write it. So let's just pretend I want to run analysis. We'll do OK, accept new table. So now you can see all these numbers are changed. And let's just say I'll save it. So now I saved it. And then if I go back into the Tuner Studio, now it tells me right now, it says you made a change in another program. So before you do anything else, it prompts you and it says, you made a change somewhere else. Do you want to load the change? Would you like the Tuner Studio to load the changes? Yes. So now it loads the changes. And let's see where we're at on the startup, see if it still works. Flip the key back on. It shows me the differences between what is in the MicroSquirt and what is in the Tuner Studio. So we made the Tuner Studio changes, but the computer still has this change in there. So what I want to do is send the Tuner Studio settings to the controller, because we're going to make that change. So there you go. I think that's all I really want to talk about. But hopefully that was not too much of a long how-to video. I tried to make it not very how-to, but kind of wanted to go over what my initial thoughts were. And I've only used this thing for like a couple weeks, I guess, of actual using it. I don't have a whole lot of knowledge on it, so I want to do some more, I guess, like advanced videos as I start to learn more about it. But just jumping into it, I feel like it's very user-friendly. I had a little bit of, like I said, tuning theory knowledge before, so I think that helps. But there's a lot of resources out there, and it shows you, like I said, you select something, it shows you a little bit of a description for what it is at the bottom. So that's always a nice reference. If you're not really sure, it shows you kind of what it does. So that's, I guess, my first impressions. I'm pretty happy about it. I like how simple it is, and I'm excited to do more with it. I want to add a boost controller to the car and do some other stuff and actually see what we can do with this thing. So thanks for watching. Have a good one.